You just sold your company for a massive payout, but millions of dollars of that deal are tied up in an earn-out clause. If that clause is poorly drafted, that future payment can be wiped out in an instant. Look at the recent dispute between Krafton and Unknown-Worlds. Krafton acquired the gaming studio with a clause promising up to $250 million in additional earn-out payments. But right before a major milestone, Krafton fired the CEO of Unknown-Worlds, triggering a legal battle in Delaware that centered on whether that firing was intended to block the payout. This happens because earn-outs contain a structural conflict of interest. The buyer controls the acquired company, but they have a financial incentive to keep performance just below the payout threshold to avoid additional costs. Vague promises to play fair will not protect your valuation. To manage this structural conflict, you must replace subjective expectations with a 4-step legal framework built directly into your stock purchase agreement. Step 1 is locking down the math. Setting your earnout targets using broad terms like profit or revenue creates significant accounting loopholes for the buyer. Buyers who control the books can influence these basic metrics. They can front-load heavy marketing expenses to temporarily drain profits, or deliberately delay signing major client contracts until the exact day after your earnout period expires. Look at this text comparison. Replace simple profit metrics with precise terminology. Setting the target as normalized EBITDA prevents buyers using interest, taxes, or depreciation to lower recorded performance. You must also define normalization parameters. Exclude one-time consulting fees or restructuring costs. By mathematically restricting the financial formula, you remove the buyer's most legally ambiguous avenue for silent manipulation. Step 2 protects the people required to actually hit those targets. As the Krafton case demonstrated, granting the buyer unlimited termination rights during an earnout period creates a high-risk vulnerability. When a buyer suddenly removes key management personnel, the acquired team loses operational continuity. This disrupts the leadership structure required to drive the revenue targets. To protect your executives, the employment contract must mandate that termination can only occur for cause. This phrase must be followed by a strict, limited list of definable offenses, like fraud or gross negligence. You also need to add language that forces the buyer to obtain the seller's written consent before making major shifts in business strategy or reallocating critical resources to other divisions. Legally protecting the personnel and their resources ensures the management team maintains operational control over the assets they need to pursue the agreed-upon targets. Step 3 defines how hard the buyer actually has to work. Standard contracts often use the phrase commercially reasonable efforts, but different courts interpret that vague standard in very different ways. In the Delaware case FMLS v. Integris, the buyer failed to hire specialized scientists for months. That operational failure hindered the target company's ability to generate revenue, which the court found was a breach of their effort obligations. Read this clause carefully. Anchor the buyer's obligations to historical precedents, forcing them to maintain funding and personnel consistent with operations prior to closing. Next, write highly specific operational requirements directly into the effort clause. Mandate the retention of roles required to hit metrics. Translating vague legal standards into explicit operational mandates prevents a judge from having to determine what the buyer's true level of effort should have been. Step 4 provides a specific contractual safeguard against intentional sabotage. Relying purely on implied laws, like Delaware's implied duty of good faith or Article 150 of the Korean Civil Act, is a significant legal risk. Proving a buyer's subjective intent to sabotage an earnout in a courtroom is difficult. Without explicit protections, you are left trying to prove bad faith using only circumstantial communications or internal corporate documents. You can address this by drafting an explicit negative covenant. State clearly that the buyer cannot take any action or omit any action where the primary business purpose is to deprive the sellers of the earnout payment. This specific phrasing changes the legal dynamic. If the buyer makes suspicious operational changes, they are forced to show a legitimate alternative business reason for doing so to avoid a breach. This explicit anti-sabotage clause shifts the burden of proof onto the buyer, making bad faith tactics significantly more difficult to sustain in a legal dispute. Here is your completed dispute-proof legal framework. The financial math is locked down. The management team is protected from arbitrary firing. The operational efforts are clearly defined, and potential sabotage is addressed with explicit prohibitions. Review these exact contractual markups with your M&A legal counsel to ensure they are formally integrated into your live stock purchase agreement. A precisely drafted earn-out clause manages the structural conflict of interest, providing an enforceable roadmap for the transition and future payout.